Hello everyone, my name is Aquility. Welcome back to another Black Clover mobile video. Today I want to talk about some news that we have for the game, specifically regarding JP, but we all know it's later gonna come out for global as well. And specifically talking about new characters, we got a bunch of news. I mean, it's been a while already. This has been out for like 2 weeks, I think, but I'm just gonna try to get everything together that we have so far. And we have new characters for season 10, we have new characters for season 11, and we have some special characters as well. And I think that's very exciting. So I would say let's just go over the new characters, look at the new icons that we have, and I will tell you guys my opinion about it and if I think those characters are gonna be good or bad and what they would be useful for. So, like I said, we have new characters for season 10 already. So in season 10, we will be getting Clover Academy Noelle as the first character. Her first skill is Water Sphere Strike. It overpowers an enemy by firing a water sphere at them, dealing damage. It inflicts barrier immunity on an enemy for X turns and grants an SP plus X buff to the ally with the highest all attack. So this is good obviously against barrier units, or teams that use a barrier in general, because then they won't be able to do barriers, right? And then skill 2 is Magic Practice Fail. Noelle fails to control her magic and scatters a stream of water, granting all allies a buff. It removes X instances of continuous damage from all allies, and if continuous damage is removed from an ally, for every instance of continuous damage removed, it grants them an X% of own max HP as continuous HP recovery for X turns. So, already judging from the second skill, I think that Noelle is probably going to be a support unit. Again, which, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense for her to be kind of a support slash attack unit because of her water barrier bubble kind of thing that she has going on. But yeah, so it removes instances of continuous damage from all allies, which is really good. Especially if you are up against like burn units or even like, I don't know, Asta teams that have the Witch Queen and she does her DOTs. So that is really good. And then it also heals, right? Yes, it heals. So maybe she could even be a healer. That would be crazy. I mean, let's see. Her special is I'll Succeed This Time, a huge water sphere created by Noelle bursts, granting a buff to all allies. Grants all allies HP recovery equal to X% of own max HP. Removes X debuffs from all allies and grants all allies an increased damage resistance buff for X turns. The thing is, I can't see Noelle as a healer. Like, she doesn't have any kind of healing abilities in the anime at all, so I feel like this, even though this has some healing abilities, I think this is probably more gonna be support, right? But this special also sounds quite strong, I would say. Like, it heals, it removes debuffs, and it grants an increased damage resistance buff. That is pretty good. And then passive, at the start of the battle, it inflicts an X% reduced damage dealt debuff. Okay, for X turns, so it debuffs the enemies. And then her awakening passive is if continuous damage is inflicted on self, it grants herself an X% increased mobility buff. That is always good. Every turn grants all allies X% of own max HP as HP recovery. That is also very great. And then her partner skill grants the partner mage X% of own max HP as continuous HP recovery for X turn. I mean, continuous HP recovery is really good also. And grants the partner mage debuff immunity for X turns. The Grimoire skill in skill 2 we don't know yet, and her Grimoire passive is at the start of the battle, it grants an ally attacker mage X% of increased max HP. An attacker mage increased max HP. I'm trying to think, because this literally sounds like it would be good to have an attacker whose attacks kind of scale with HP, right? Or because I don't see how else this would be be of any use. But I mean, I guess that's fine because then that means you don't necessarily need her grimoire. But yeah, all in all, I think this character sounds quite strong and she could be pretty good. And then we have season 10, Clover Academy Rill. And his first skill is Color Ball. He throws several colors of paint at an enemy dealing damage, and it grants an ally, Defender Mage, an X% increased mobility buff. Okay, and then skill 2, Composition Adjustment. Rill thinks about the composition of his painting, buffing all allies. Grants all allies an X% reduced damage taken buff for X turns. So he sounds like a supporter. I think Noelle might be a healer and he might be a supporter. And so far, the skills sound okay, not too crazy. His special is Surging Inspiration. Rill finishes his masterpiece, granting a buff to an ally. Grants an ally an X% increased mobility buff. I mean, he buffs mobility, mostly mobility and reduce damage, kind of. So, kind of speedy and mostly just buffing. But the buff is like, I feel like it's not super crazy, you know. But I mean, it is mobility after all, so we will see. Maybe that can be good. If all allies have the power attribute, so meaning that he will be red, it grants himself speed plus X at the start of the battle, and at the start of a turn, it grants. Oh, that was passive. If all allies have the power attribute, it grants himself speed plus X at the start of the battle. So pretty much the same as I think. And his Awakening passive is at the start of a turn, it grants himself a speed plus X buff, and upon taking damage from an attacker, grants himself a X% increased mobility buff. Oh, that was, it grants himself not speed plus X, but special points plus X. So that's pretty good. And then his partner skill, it grants the partner mage an X% increased mobility buff. His grimoire skill on skill 1 is grants all allies increased speed. And his grimoire passive, upon attacking an attacker, there is an X% chance to grant self an SP plus X buff. So I mean, the grimoire is also not that crazy. All in all, so he's gonna be red and he's gonna be buffing speed. I think this can be quite good for the red team. I mean, we have pretty strong red characters already, and we also have Finral still. But this might be the replacement for Finral, but we will see how crazy he is gonna be. Next up, we have Black Bull's Zora. And I think Zora's already out, right? I think we have Zora and Thread of Fate Vanessa already. So I might just skip over Zora from here, because I think we already have that. Then for season 11, we have Party Nozel. Party Nozel, his first skill is Silver Thorns. Silver Thorns rise out of the ground, dealing damage to an enemy. If X or fewer instances of Mercury are present on self, there is an X% chance to inflict continuous poison damage on an enemy for X turns. And if X or more instances of Mercury are present on self, inflicts continuous poison damage on an enemy for X turns. So depending on how many instances of Mercury he has, that changes the effect of this first skill. And Mercury, we already know what Mercury does. Mercury does at the start of a turn, takes X% of current HP as damage. I don't know how to feel about that. That sounds like a debuff. But let's see how we even get Mercury in that instance. Skill 2 is Silver Swords. Creates silver swords and throws them at all enemies dealing damage. If X or fewer instances of Mercury are present on self, inflicts disarm level X on an enemy for X turns, and if X or more instances of Mercury are present on self, inflicts a disarm on level X on an enemy for X turns. That's literally the same thing. Maybe it's gonna be for a longer duration, but kind of weird. Inflicts remove debuffs on a designated enemy. Inflicts reduced buff duration by X turns debuff on all enemies. That's pretty good. And then his special is Sleep in the Silver Ocean. Summons a deep mercury ocean, dealing damage to an enemy. Why would it be an ocean and then just damage one enemy? That doesn't make any sense, but okay. Attacks after inflicting immortality immunity on an enemy. I mean, I guess that is good if you are attacking characters or enemies that get an immortality buff once they reach a certain HP. So that can be quite good, I guess. And upon killing an enemy using a special skill, it inflicts X% of magic attack as extra damage on all enemies based on the instances of mercury inflicted on self. And it grants himself mercury removal. Okay. And his passive is that at the start of a turn it inflicts mercury on self. So every turn he gains 1 mercury. And then with his special you get rid of that of those stacks. So yeah, you gotta be careful with that and play that strategically, I guess. His awakening passive is it converts all instances of continuous damage inflicted on self into mercury, and it nullifies mercury damage. So if you want to really use him, you need to get him to 2. Because nullifies mercury damage is big. For if he's going off of mercury stacks, and then with his awakening passive you can just literally nullify the damage that he gets from those stacks, that is pretty cracked. So I think you really want that, and especially because the continuous damage that he is taking also gets transferred into mercury is insane, especially if these multipliers that are on his skill 1 and skill 2, and even on his special skill, if those are quite high or like good, and you have like a lot of stacks, like imagine you have like but it's continuous damage, right? Yeah, it's continuous damage. Even though it's continuous damage, let's say you have like from Witch Queen, even you get 3 DOTs and you turn all 3 of those into mercury, and he gets like a, I don't know, 5% increase for every mercury stack. That's already 15% just through that, and then maybe he has 3 already because it's been 3 turns, so that makes like 6 stacks, and that would be like, can't calculate, 30% more damage, and that is quite huge. That is pretty good. Yeah, so that's interesting. We will see about his multipliers, and then we know if how cracked that's gonna be. His partner skill inflicts continuous poison damage on an enemy for X turns. That's not that crazy, but partner skills tend to be not that crazy for attackers anyways. I think he's an attacker, by the way. His grimoire skill and skill, we don't know this. And his grimoire passive is if continuous damage is not present on self upon taking damage, there is an X% chance to inflict a X% increased damage taken debuff on an enemy for X turns. Interesting. This does not necessarily help him out that much. This is just like a general good thing, I guess, but I mean, it's a good thing for an attacker, so it makes sense. And then the second season 11 character is Party Kahono, and Party Kahono's first skill is Forte Bubbles. She forcefully shoots bubbles imbued with song magic, dealing damage to an enemy, which grants an X% increased attack buff to the ally with the highest attack for X turns. Buffing attackers sounds like a typical supporter thing at the moment. Then skill 2 is Fantastic Melody. It sings a fantastic melody, buffing an ally. X% chance to grant an ally an extended buff duration by X turns buff, grants an ally an increased attack level X buff for X turns, and grants an ally opening aria. Opening aria increases penetration by X%, crit damage by X%, and upon gaining X instances of opening aria, removes 5 instances of opening aria and grants festival aria. So I'm guessing that if you reach 5 instances of opening aria, it will transfer these 5 instances of opening aria and give you festival aria, and festival aria gives you X% increased pen, and X% increased crit damage, and X% increased damage dealt. So this is pretty much a strong buffer for single target, so this is probably going to be really good, mostly for PvE things. Let's see what her special is. Her special is Cantable. Kahono sings a song at a festival, buffing all allies. It grants herself an X% increased mobility buff, grants all allies an increased crit rate, level X buff for X turns, and grants all allies opening aria. Okay, that is pretty cool. So, yeah, that is good. Seems like a good supporter. Maybe if she should be red and you pair her with, but I mean she's probably gonna be a buffer, and Rill is already a buffer because Rill is really buffing the speed, and she's buffing the damage and everything. So if you have like speed and damage, and then you have a very strong damage dealer like Asta, even season 1 Asta or Black Asta, both might work. So that sounds crazy. Maybe this can be good. And then her passive, upon taking damage from an attacker, it grants an X% increased damage dealt buff to the ally with the highest attack for X turns. So also this taking damage from an attacker thing, I don't know if this why they're repeating things like this so often, but it's literally the same thing from that Rill has almost, but giving an increased damage dealt buff instead of speed, right? And then Awakening passive is upon taking damage, it grants opening aria to the ally with the highest attack. That is really good because that speeds that process up even more. And then upon using a special skill, it grants 1 extra instance of opening aria to a designated ally. So that is even better. So awakening her to 2 is also really good, it seems like. And then her partner skill grants the partnered mage an increased attack level X buff, and during the partnered mage's attack, there is an X% chance to inflict a stun status ailment on an enemy. It's okay. It's a good supporter partner skill kind of thing to use. Even though I think with her you would probably rather go for the special. And then her grimoire skill on skill 2, we actually know that, and it gives SP plus X buff, special points. It's good. The question is if it's on herself, because that would be good. And then her grimoire passive is upon taking damage from an attacker, grants a X% increased favorite damage dealt buff to the ally with the highest all attack for X turns. So that is just literally another buff that is almost the same as her normal passive. Great. So that's it pretty much for all of the seasonal characters, but we have 2 more to go, and those 2 are very exciting, and I am so excited for it. We don't really know how this is gonna be, but actually let me go over the characters first, and then let me tell you my thoughts about them and how it's gonna work afterwards. So we have information on Spirit Dive. You guys know Yuno is my favorite character. I am so hyped for Spirit Dive Yuno. I can't wait to get him. And yeah, so his skill 1 is it inflicts an X% reduced mobility debuff on an enemy. If Spirit Dive is present on himself, it grants an X% increased speed buff for X turns. So it makes sense. Like he's an attacker, but he's gonna be focused on speed and just dealing damage as fast as possible, which is really cool. I really like that, and that's just, it's gonna be cracked, Skill 2, it inflicts an X% reduced mobility debuff on an enemy, just so literally the same thing again. And if Spirit Dive is present on self, it inflicts silence on a designated enemy for X turns. So not only does he make himself faster, he also slows down the enemy. That's insane. It's insane, and it's gonna be crazy. His special inflicts total silence on an enemy for X turns. Not quite sure where the difference between silence and total silence is right now. I think silence only means that they're not allowed to use their ultimate or skill 2. I'm not quite sure. Either one of those, and then total silence blocks both of those skills. And then it grants himself Spirit Dive for X turns, and it grants himself an X% increased speed buff for X turns, right? And Spirit Dive doesn't do anything else, it just says it awakens Yuno's true powers. Maybe they're gonna add another buff with that. then, or maybe we get this in one of his passives or something. But so you have to do his special, and then you get Spirit Dive, and if you have Spirit Dive, your skill 1 and your skill 2 is pretty much more crazy than it was before. And then his passive is at the start of a turn, it grants himself Blessing of the Wind Spirit, so he gets another passive with his passive basically. And Blessing of the Wind Spirit, it increases his damage dealt by X%. So that's just pretty straightforward. I like these. I like when it's straightforward, but you know that it works, you know? And then his Awakening passive, upon gaining Spirit Dive, it grants himself invulnerability for X turns. You know you want to get him to 2, right? You know you want to get his Awakening passive because that's really, really, really good. Every time he gains Spirit Dive, he gets invulnerability. Like, that's crazy, right? Because oh my god, I can already imagine this. You want to play him with someone who gives you special points, so that you can obviously do his special more often and faster and faster, so that he has invulnerability and is faster and his skills do more damage all the time. That is so crazy. It's gonna be amazing. Um, we will see how that goes, but I think I already can tell that he's gonna be pretty cracked. And also, not just invulnerability, but also at the start of a turn grants himself an SP plus X buff. So pretty much already doing that, making him do his special faster. And then his partner skill, attacks after removing immortality from an enemy, is also not that bad. And his Grimoire skill on skill 2 is it inflicts barrier immunity on an enemy for X turns. It's like, it's good, you know, they can't do a barrier on top of that. And then his Grimoire passive is, if Spirit Dive is present on self upon attacking, there is an X% chance to grant an SP plus X buff. So again, buffing his special points so that he can do his special again. This is absolutely insane. And this also shows that his Grimoire pretty much only works on him, because if Spirit Dive is present on himself, like, that only applies to himself, right? So guys, I don't know, but Yuno is gonna be amazing. Yuno is gonna be pretty cracked. But we have another character. We don't have super much on her yet, but we have some info on her. And it is Valkyrie Armor Noelle. And it says, Noelle's strong determination to protect her siblings and her hard work pay off as she finally awakens her powers. This armor, anything that comes into contact with this mana, is under my control. Valkyrie Armor Noelle is also pretty insane. They say here that Valkyrie Armor Noelle should be the first anniversary unit. The schedule could look like this. Season 10 is Zora and Vanessa, we have those now. And Clover Academy Noelle and Rill, I think those are not out yet. They're gonna be out later. And then for season 11, it says Spirit Dive Yuno and Party Nozel and Kahono. And then for season 12, we are not sure. And then for season 13, we get Valkyrie Armor Noelle as the first anniversary unit. So, let me tell you guys what I think personally. Because, to be quite fair, I am not super up to date with the story. I'm not quite sure where we reached right now in the story, but obviously Spirit Dive Yuno appears before Noelle. I don't like the fact that they think that Spirit Dive Yuno is only gonna get a normal character and not like a special festival unit kind of situation, which would be a little sad, I must say, because I don't see any other reason for him to be a special character, you know, because we got Julius quarter anniversary kind of, we got Black Asta for half anniversary kind of, and then for 3/4 anniversary we got Mario. And so for season 11, getting Spirit Dive Yuno, that would mean he would be a normal character. I don't know if I like that. I feel like he deserves to be a special unit. So I would kind of love to see Spirit Dive Yuno as the first anniversary character, and I also feel like they still have so many other characters that they could do before that. Yeah, I don't. I think they could just push this out a little further. I think Spirit Dive Yuno should be the first anniversary unit, and then Valkyrie Armor Noel could. They could also do both of them for first anniversary, like do part one and part two, and then have Spirit Dive Yuno be the first one and Noel the second one. But I think Spirit Dive Yuno should be first anniversary, and Valkyrie Armor Noel could then be maybe even like quarter or half, 1.5 anniversary. But yeah, I think the reason why they think like this is just because Global is rushing so much, but JP and Korea is not doing that. They're not going that fast with these kind of things. So I don't think we have to like get out character for character for character right after one another. So I would love to see them do something special out of it. Anyways, we don't really have too much information on her though. We only know that she is in the files somewhat, and what we also have, we have these banners. So we see Noel and Brill gonna be the next seasonals, of course, and we have their arts already. The one for Noel is looking very cute. This is what she's gonna look like, and then we have the one for Brill, also kind of cute. Brill is also one of my favorite characters, and then we also have the skill icons for like Kahono and Nozel, and for Spirit Dive Yuno too. And they're all looking pretty cool. Like, what more can you say to that, right? Yeah, that's pretty much all of the news that we have on these characters so far. I am pretty hyped. I am really looking forward to seeing those characters, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think. Who should be the anniversary character? Who comes out when? And what are your opinions on those characters? Who do you think is missing from the characters in the story that are still coming? I am gonna be talking about characters more in another video that I'm planning to do quite soon, where I'm gonna do another prediction video for characters that are gonna come out soon, and in my opinion, that I think would be good to bring out. As for that, we will talk about that later. And yeah, as always, stay kind, stay balanced, and keep gaming, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone!